Okay, hello everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. It's great to have so many people here for this webinar info session on applying for the Religious Studies doctoral program at the University of Pennsylvania. So I am Donovan Schaefer. I'm the chair of the graduate group in Religious Studies here at Penn, and with me here is Ms. Kate Stoler, who is the graduate coordinator in Religious Studies. It will mostly be me talking this evening, but Ms. Stoler might come in if we have some more technical questions. Generally speaking, I tend to handle the more kind of conceptual side of things. She knows the nuts and bolts of applications a little bit better. So she's here on call if we have any questions along those lines. So what we're going to do is start with a presentation and overview of the doctoral program in religious studies at the University of Pennsylvania, and some of the procedures and protocols around application. What I'm putting in the chat right now is just a kind of table of contents with all of the topics that we'll be covering over the course of this. So at the end of this, we'll have some time for Q&A. So please write your questions down. Feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end when we have some time set aside for that. So I wanted to start with an overview of the doctoral program in the Religious Studies graduate group at the University of Pennsylvania. We understand this doctoral program as being, in essence, a 5-year PhD program. Within those 5 years, we typically try to secure full funding for everybody whom we admit, but we also tend to admit a relatively small number of students every year. So our typical intake in a year is 2 graduate students. In the past few years, we have had an acceptance rate of about 5% to 10%, essentially. So we accept a relatively small number of graduate students, but we do provide 5 years of full funding, which includes tuition, a stipend, and health insurance. Now, the funding is technically for the academic year, the 9-month academic year, but for most years of your funding, you will also receive funding for summer. The amount that is given to you over summer on this fellowship varies a little bit, but typically summer funding is granted as well, in addition to the full funding for the 5 years that you are here. Students will often find ways to extend their time here, getting an external fellowship, getting an internal fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania, getting a grant from an external source. Those are all ways to go from 5 years to 6 years of funding, or even in some cases, all the way up to 7 years of funding. But we can't fund people past 7 years. So if you manage to get 2 bonus years of funding, that's typically the limit of what can be done. Within the program itself, we expect 20 credits of coursework to be submitted for the doctoral program. And 1 credit is 1 course. So that means over the course of your time here at Penn, you will need to take 20 courses in order to have enough credits to receive the PhD. One exception to this is that anybody coming in with a master's degree can transfer up to 8 credits from a previous degree. We usually will study the transcript coming from your master's degree and decide how many of the 8 credits that we are able to successfully transfer. Somebody who comes in without a master's degree can expect to take about 3 years of coursework with us. Somebody who comes in with a master's degree will usually take about 2 years. The numbers vary a little bit depending on how many classes you take per semester, but it's usually 2 to 3 years of coursework. We also, by the end of your degree program, expect you to have working competency in at least 2 research languages, which are determined in consultation with your advisor. And there are a number of rules for how to determine what counts as a research language. That's something that we typically go over after somebody has been admitted. We also require all doctoral students to do 4 semesters of teaching. Usually that is done as a teaching assistant. in the second and third years of the doctoral program. So in your first year of the doctoral program, we assume that you are finding your footing and getting oriented to the University of Pennsylvania, starting to think about what your project will be. In the second and third years, we add the teaching assistant duties. And then in the fourth and fifth years, we assume that you are finalizing your research and ultimately writing up your dissertation. We also have in our doctoral program 2 rounds of exams. We have qualifying exams, which take place at the end of the second year, and candidacy exams, which take place at the third year. And the final component of the doctoral program here is the dissertation. This is an original contribution to scholarly knowledge that you will craft in consultation with your advisor and with your doctoral committee, which is submitted as the final contribution to your doctoral program. So that's a quick overview of the program. Let me get a little bit more into the backdrop of how the graduate group in religious studies operates. So one of the unusual features of the University of Pennsylvania at the graduate level is that we do not actually have departments that administer graduate degrees. We have departments that administer undergraduate degrees, but at the graduate level, the departments are replaced by graduate groups. So if you go to the website for the Department of Religious Studies, you can see that we have a link on there for the faculty who are in the Religious Studies graduate group. The graduate group includes the 8 standing faculty members of Religious Studies, but it also includes about 24 faculty members from around the campus who have an interest and expertise in religious studies as a field. What this means is that graduate study at the University of Pennsylvania is highly interdisciplinary. There is more of an emphasis on interdisciplinary research at Penn than there is at the majority of our peer institutions. When we talk about the graduate group, we are talking about a network of faculty members around campus who have expertise in different aspects of religious studies and who are available to doctoral students for service on exams or for serving in as dissertation committees. These are the people that graduate students in religious studies will often take classes with. Sometimes they will pursue mentorship with these other faculty members. Everybody in the religious studies graduate group is on call to assist graduate students in religious studies in any way that they can. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us a lot of interdisciplinary richness. It means that we have a much broader field of conversation partners available for our graduate students. That said, we do insist that applicants should be housed in the department where your primary dissertation supervisor has an affiliation. So if you want to work with Professor Julian Thomas or Professor Justin McDaniel in the Religious Studies department, then absolutely you should apply to, as your primary advisor, then absolutely you should be applying to Religious Studies as your graduate program. However, if you want to work on, say, Taoism or on, say, Hinduism, we do not have specialists in Taoism or Hinduism in the Department of Religious Studies. And so you should apply for the East Asian Languages and Civilizations program or the South Asia Studies program rather than Religious Studies, because you want your primary advisor to be in the department that you are a member of. And there are complicated reasons for this, but ultimately it's designed to serve students as best as possible by giving them a firm anchor in the disciplinary department that they are applying to. The main point for this is that wherever you apply at the University of Pennsylvania, it is very likely that you will be able to take classes with professors in religious studies. And if you are successfully apply to the Religious Studies graduate group, you are very likely going to be taking classes with professors in other departments. But your supervisor should be in the department that you initially apply to. So for instance, I teach the class Theories and Methods in Religious Studies, And we have a number of students in that class from other departments who are working on projects that are related to religious studies. That is the kind of interdisciplinary exchange that is made possible by the graduate group structure that we have here at the graduate level at Penn. Okay, that's the kind of big picture, zoom out, sort of a conceptual foundation of the religious studies graduate group. Let me talk a little bit more specifically about applying for our doctoral program. So as a minimum requirement for the doctoral program at Penn in religious studies, we expect a bachelor's degree in religious studies or a related field. So it is possible to apply for our doctoral program in religious studies with a bachelor's degree that is not in religious studies. However, this is a doctoral program. It is designed to provide you with advanced, high-level training in the field of religious studies. A project that happens to be about religion may not be a religious studies project. It may be that there is some other program that is a more appropriate venue for your project than the religious studies department because it is not part of the field of religious studies per se. So what I recommend to all applicants is that if you are planning on applying for the religious studies doctoral program and you do not have previous degrees in religious studies as a field, make sure that in your statement, you are as clear as possible about how and why you are prepared to take up doctoral study in the field of religious studies. Talk about courses that you have taken in religious studies. Talk about research that you have done in religious studies. Talk about major projects that you have concluded in religious studies as a field. All of this will signal to the graduate admissions committee that you are ready for doctoral level study in the field of religious studies itself. Now, a master's degree is helpful if you are applying for the doctoral program in religious studies. I would say that more than half of the students that we admit into our doctoral program already have a master's degree. However, it is not required. There are certainly plenty of students who are admitted who come to us without a prior master's degree. So nobody is precluded by virtue of not having a master's degree, but it is something that helps. And I will say, if you have an undergraduate degree in a field that is not religious studies, and you would like to apply for the doctoral program in religious studies, one of the best stepping stones you can take, one of the best intermediary steps that you can pursue is to get a master's degree in religious studies. There are excellent master's degree programs all over the world in the field of religious studies. Somebody who has a master's degree in religious studies, obviously that's an excellent prelude to being admitted to a graduate program in religious studies. Let me talk a little bit more about technical requirements. So as it stands, GRE scores are not necessary to apply for the religious studies doctoral program. I want to add, though, that this is a fluid situation. The question of whether or not test scores are required is something that is under constant conversation, and it's also something that the federal government in the US is very interested in right now, whether or not test scores are a requirement. So I will say that they are not currently required, but I can't guarantee that that won't change. It is possible that there will be some shift, probably not this year, but it is possible. And we need to revise this. We need to revise this question. But as it stands, GRE scores are not necessary for an application. There are a complex set of rules about when an international student needs to provide proof of English language proficiency. And one of the things that I want to do, if you have not done so already, please go to the Religious Studies website, the Penn Graduate Program in Religious Studies website, where all of this information is available. Everything about the application process and all of the details for when you need to pursue an exception to like something like the language requirement, that is all outlined in detail on the Religious Studies website. I will say that if somebody is determined to demonstrate proof of English language proficiency for TEFL exams, competitive applicants usually have a score of 100 or above. And YELTS exams, competitive applicants typically have an overall band score of 7 or above. And in both cases, we also like to see consistency across the 4 sections of the exam. So the way that this works, if you are providing proof of English language proficiency, is you self-report your scores on your application, and we electronically match those scores to the CollegeNet reporting portal. And if you need to report this, the institution code that we use to submit these scores to Penn is 2926. I've just put that number in the chat if it helps. Okay. In terms of the specific places where you are going to pursue more information about this, I'm going to put some of this in the chat. A large amount of relevant information is available here. This is our departmental graduate application guidelines available at this link here. I also want to show you where the application form itself is. The application form is here. This is the graduate school's own website. This is not religious studies. This belongs to the graduate school, but you select religious studies as the graduate group that you want to apply for in the process of filling out this form. They also have additional information there. I believe, Ms. Stoler, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe that that form is now live. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So the form is live. Applications are now being received. There is more information here at this web address about the application process. Again, this is from the graduate division. This is not from us, but they provide you with more sort of general information about what to know about graduate applications. And the last thing that I will mention about the application process is that there is an application fee. There are circumstances under which the application fee can be waived, but we in the Department of Religious Studies do not handle that personally. Those requests need to be directed to the graduate division itself. They will assess whether or not your application fee can be waived. The email address that you use for that is here. I've just sent it to Ms. Stoler. That didn't change, did it? Is this still the correct email address?
Let me look. No, that did change
It
actually.
did change. Okay. Would you track
I
that
have the
down,
new
please?
one, yeah. And I believe Maeve and I updated that on the website. But I'll put that in the chat now.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's the kind of big picture. That's kind of the big picture sort of requirements in order to apply. I want to talk in a little bit more detail about the application itself, the contents of the application, and the kinds of things that we like to see in the application materials that you send us. So you are going to, on the application form, be asked to indicate 2 to 3 research areas in the religious studies graduate group on your form. So we have a number of different research areas. I'm going to include these in the, I'm going to post these in the chat as well. These are our current research areas. And as I said, you are going to select between 1 and 3 areas of interest when you fill out your application form. The thing that I want to suggest to you is to please put your primary area of interest first. So maybe you want to do Buddhism and material and visual culture. Put Buddhism first. Or maybe you want to do Judaism and modernity, science, and secularism. Put Judaism first. That will be the easiest way to make sure that your application gets seen by the relevant readers on the graduate committee. What I would also say about this is that these research areas are not tracks in a kind of conventional sense. They don't lock you into anything. They don't require you to take particular courses. It's more of a signal to the graduate admissions committee of how you position yourself in the field, what your interests are, what kind of project you might end up pursuing. So I say all of this just so that you don't overthink the selection of the research areas that you check on this form, but do put some thought into it just so that you can make sure that the right people on the graduate admissions committee read your application and they are best able to adjudicate your fit with the program. Personal statement. So as part of your application portfolio, you are going to include a personal statement. Let me give you a little bit of guidance about what we're expecting from the personal statement. So some of this is on the website that I sent you, the top website, the Religious Studies Graduate Group application website. But let me make a few points here as well. The first thing that I want to underline is that this statement is not an autobiography. We don't just want to hear the story of how you got interested in religion or personal details that led up to why it is that you want to do the particular project that you want to do at the doctoral level. This is fundamentally a research statement. Now, it may be that you want to begin with a personal detail. Maybe you want to tell a very brief story that introduces how you came to be interested in this topic. Spend a couple of sentences on that. That's fine. But what we don't want is a personalized autobiography that takes up the entire word limit of your research statement. This is fundamentally a way for you to signal to us what your research interests are, what kind of project you might end up doing at Penn in the doctoral program here. It's also an opportunity for you to show that you are up to date in the field and to give us an inkling of how it is that what your angle of approach is going to be on your research question. So I would say use the personal statement as an opportunity to display your existing expertise and the depth of your knowledge and understanding of the field of religious studies. That's one of the main things that the admissions committee is going to be looking for, is a clear sense of how your research interests squarely fit you in with research that's already being done in the graduate group in religious studies. I would say that a good statement will often lay out a potential dissertation topic, but without being a complete dissertation proposal. We want to hear a little bit more about what your broader area of interest is and how your dissertation topic might flow out of that broader area of interest. A very interesting way of articulating a dissertation topic is to talk about existing trends in the field, existing aspects of the intellectual landscape that you see yourself as engaging, and to talk about how your project fits in with that existing intellectual landscape. Now, that might mean that you're developing an intellectual trend line that is already in progress in the field, but it also might mean that you are correcting something. It might mean that you are coming along and saying, the field currently believes X, but they are wrong to believe X. And my dissertation project is going to demonstrate that rather than X, we need to think about Y. That's a great way to articulate a dissertation topic, is to show that you are meaningfully responding in a critical and creative way to the existing intellectual landscape. I will also say that in your statement, you should clearly indicate 2 to 4 faculty members in the religious studies graduate group with whom you hope to work. You want to show that you are well-versed in the research that's already being done in the department. That doesn't mean you need to know everything. It just means that you need to demonstrate clearly that you see which faculty members in the graduate group would be good supervisors, good committee members, good mentors, good people to take courses with in the existing graduate group, which demonstrates that your project is a good fit for the University of Pennsylvania as a whole. Now, that might include, in addition to faculty members, mentioning things like archival holdings that you know are housed at the University of Pennsylvania. Maybe there are artifacts at the Penn Museum that you are very interested in researching. Maybe there are archival holdings at the Kislak Center for Special Collections and Manuscripts that you want to research as part of your dissertation topic. Things like that send a clear signal that you have done your homework, that you know that Penn is a good fit for your project, and shows us that we would be the best home for the research that you want to do. I would also say that in your personal statement, it's important to talk about the dissertation that you might ultimately want to write. It's important to talk about the intellectual landscape that the dissertation is going to emerge from. But I would also say, keep it focused. You don't want this to be too broad. You don't want us to come away with the impression that you are interested in everything under the sun and maybe don't have a clear picture of how you're going to narrow in on a specific topic for the dissertation project that you are eventually going to write. The last thing I want to say about this is that we, as of this year, have an AI policy around how much AI can be used in the writing of the materials in your application process. The general rule of thumb is to not use any AI to write or edit your application materials. The reason for this is that we need to get a window into how you think. If you are using AI, AI is like a smokescreen. AI is somebody else's words, somebody else's ideas that are preventing us from getting a good feel for how you yourself are thinking about these topics. If we are under the impression while we are reading that you have used AI to write your personal statement, there's a very good chance that we will not be able to give you consideration, because if we don't know who you are, if we don't know the way that you think, then we just can't we can't develop a well-informed opinion of how well you would actually fit with the doctoral program in religious studies. Okay, so the personal statement is one of the main elements of the application portfolio that you're going to put together for an application to the doctoral program. We also require a writing sample. Now, when you're thinking about this writing sample, we would strongly encourage you to think about this as a sample of your best work. Give us the best illustration that you have available of the kind of academic work, the kind of analytic work, and the kind of research that you are able to do. We like to see a robust engagement with primary and secondary sources as appropriate for something like this. We like to see a clear argument. We like to see a sophisticated use of evidence, and we like to see self-reflexivity about your method. And clarity and persuasiveness are the most important parts of this as a whole. I would say as well, for your writing sample, if you have written something like a master's thesis, it is not uncommon for us to receive a chapter from a master's thesis as a writing sample. That is fine. But what I would encourage you to do is to give us, if it's an inner chapter of the master's thesis, give us a kind of introduction to the chapter as a whole that gets us up to speed with what you have already done in the master's thesis. You really want to think about this like if you are given a chapter from the middle of a book, think about how you as a reader would experience that. Would you be able to immediately figure out what it is that the author is trying to do, what they're trying to say, what they've already done, what they are building on from the work that they've already done? How much of that would be clear immediately on reading something like an excerpt of a longer document? So figure out a way to attach maybe like a one-page addendum at the beginning of your writing sample, if it's an inner chapter, that will make it as easy as possible for the members of the admissions committee to immediately clock what it is that you are up to, what it is that you are aiming for in your writing sample. And I will add, the AI policy is in effect for your writing sample as well. Do not use AI to write your writing sample or I would advise to edit your writing sample. The reason for this is that AI editing can be very intrusive. Sometimes it goes in and starts rewriting large parts of a document. So I discourage people from using AI even to edit their writing sample, but definitely don't use it to write it. We need a window into the way that you think, and the writing sample is there to give us that window. If you've given us something that's generated by AI, we just don't know how you think, and it's very difficult for us to give consideration to somebody whose mind we just don't have a clear sense of. Okay, finally, a few very quick do's and don'ts for your application. One of the things that we tend to strongly discourage is an application that is fundamentally focused on a theological topic. So within religious studies, there's a lot of discussion about the difference between theology and religious studies. Theology is typically a project that comes from within a faith tradition that is designed to advance the intellectual agenda of that faith tradition. So there could be a Sunni Muslim theologian, there could be a Buddhist theologian, there could be a Catholic theologian. They are emerging from within that tradition and by and large are speaking to other members of that tradition. We, as a religious studies department, don't do theological projects by and large. Now, sometimes this line is a little bit fuzzy, and if you have a question about which side of that line you fall on, feel free to reach out to me at any time. You can find my email address on the website and ask me whether or not you think your project would be appropriate for a Department of Religious Studies. But generally speaking, we assume that we are best able to mentor and to nourish students who are coming to us with a religious studies project rather than a theological project. We also strongly encourage everybody to mention faculty members with whom you would like to work in your personal statement. So again, I would say aim for 2 to 4 faculty members whom you name on your personal statement. I do not consider it a requirement that you have reached out to those faculty members in advance. It's okay if you haven't done that. But you should know that Penn is a good place for your project. And the best way to determine that is to make sure that you're aware of the specific faculty members in the religious studies graduate group who would be the best mentors for the project that you're thinking about. And lastly, I would say do not wait until the last minute to solicit your letters of recommendation. We have this every year that we have people whose applications come in at the last minute. Sometimes their letters are already there, but on other occasions, those letters take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to arrive. Because of when the application is due in mid-December, immediately after mid-December is the winter break. So many academics don't really get to items on their to-do list between, say, December 15th and January 15th. But we are going to be considering all applications in those first 2 weeks of January. That's when the bulk of the conversations of the graduate committee take place. If we haven't received your letters of recommendation by then, we will often have to discard applications that are otherwise promising because we don't have a complete application from them. So please talk to your letter writers early. Make sure that you're getting a solid commitment from them that they are willing to write you a favorable letter for the doctoral program, and try to get them to get those letters in as early as possible, ideally before the mid-December deadline, so that the letters are waiting for us at the time that we come in and do the review of the applications. Okay. I know that's a lot of stuff. We've got another 20 to 30 minutes or so. I'm very happy to answer any and all questions that you might have. If you have a question that I don't know the answer to, I will put it to Ms. Stoler, or we might get back to you with it. Questions for us? Okay, so a question from somebody about the writing sample. The question reads, I have a published piece that I'd like to use as my writing sample. The guidelines say submissions should be double spaced. Do I need to reformat my published work, or can I submit the original journal version? That is an excellent question. I'm going to say double spacing is not so important that you would need to go into in and reformat something that is already published. The published version is fine. I wouldn't worry about going in and changing any of that. Ms. Stoller,
Can
did
I
you?
say something on that real
Yeah,
quick?
please.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the length of the paper is really just a general guideline. Students should keep in mind that faculty have to read through anywhere from 50 to 100 of these applications. So it's really just to keep it within a general size of document so they can get enough that faculty have a good sense of your writing abilities, but not too much because it's a lot of screen time for privacy and protection reasons. We can't pull anything off of the computer. We can't print things. So it's kind of just use your best discretion to keep it within that. But the length and formatting, there's no real specific requirements that would disqualify somebody who has a different formatting to their writing sample or to their personal statement. It's just
That's
whatever
right.
works best for you.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. We do have some of these things stipulated on the website. I see this is what you're responding to with this question, and I really appreciate your scrupulousness with that. But as Ms. Stoller says, the primary reason for those stipulations is readability, and something that has been already properly formatted and typeset is going to be readable enough. So I would not worry about going in and double spacing already published work. Okay, another question. Question is, what are some past examples of good features of personal statements that make you excited about an applicant? This is a great question. This is really the personal statement in a lot of ways is the heart of the application materials. So this is exactly the right question to ask. What I would say is this. The main thing that we want to see with your personal statement is your preparation to do doctoral level work in religious studies. So the more that you can do in your personal statement to give us a window into your intellectual preparation for doctoral work in religious studies, the better. This is why I say, it's called a personal statement, and people sometimes get led astray by that. They think that it needs to be like a very personal thing, like a kind of life story. We don't want that. I would say keep autobiographical details to a necessary minimum. A little bit is fine. But the main thing that we want to see is that you have an awareness of academic conversations that are taking place in religious studies. You have a good sensibility about your project and a sense of how your project will fit in with the broader landscape of the field of religious studies. Those are the things that I would say we get most excited about, that we consider to be most enabling for somebody who is going to come into the doctoral program in religious studies. So I hope that gets at your question. Feel free to ask a follow-up if you have more queries about that. Other questions, please put them in the Q&A box. That's the easiest thing to do. So a question, should I secure an advisor before making an application to the doctoral program? The answer is no. It is not a requirement that you secure an advisor before making an application. It is not necessarily a bad idea to reach out to somebody. You might want to start a conversation with them, but you should not feel like somebody needs to say to you, yes, I will supervise this project before you apply. Again, it's not bad to make an intellectual connection with somebody, but I would not say that it's a requirement that you have already gotten somebody to confirm that they will be an advisor. We get applications all the time from people whom none of us have ever spoken to before. Nobody in the department has spoken to these people, but they come in, they have done their homework. They know very clearly whom their primary advisor would probably be. They know what kind of committee members they might take. They mention one, two, three, sometimes even more other faculty members. They mention resources on campus, and it's very clear that they know exactly why the University of Pennsylvania is the right place to do their doctorate in religious studies. So the answer to that question is no, you do not need to secure an advisor before applying to the program. Those are the questions that I have in my box. Any follow-up questions or additional questions from the audience? Ms. Stoler, is there anything that I've missed that you think is worth adding?
No, I mean, I think you did a great job of filling in the blanks where the website leaves off. Like so much of the information and the details of the logistics of the application are on the website. If anyone has a hiccup and also now with our new application system, so much of it is taken care of directly through the application. It's just a matter of going in and starting that process. The fee waiver, everything is done through the application, so it's a lot less of a need for students to be reaching out to me. But if anyone needs anything with those logistics of the program, put my email here in the chat, which is also on the website. Um, yeah, I guess I might have missed it, but with international students, TOEFL and IELTS scores, if students have had a degree in higher education from an institution in which the medium language of instruction is English, I will automatically be going in and waiving anyone who, English is a second language for them. They have a degree from another institution in which it's all in English. Once you upload the unofficial transcript to the application and submit, that's when I just go in and waive all of those at the end of the application cycle. A lot of students kind of feel like they need to reach out, let me know if that is what people are most comfortable with. They're welcome to email me, but everyone should also maybe know that I do go in, and as long as the documentation is there, just that unofficial transcript, I take care of that. So, um,
Great. That's
that's
really
just
helpful.
one common question that I get a lot. And, like I said, feel free if you're more comfortable to follow up with me in an email, but I will be taking care of that in December once everything is said and done.
Great. Okay, and we've got some more questions coming in. So a question, do I need to stick to the word count of 750 words for writing the statement of purpose mentioned on the website? Um, the short answer is yes. There's a reason why we have the word count on there. As Ms. Stoler mentioned earlier, it's partly about respecting the committee's time. There could be, we can have a very large number of applications, and the committee members only have so much time that they can allocate to each one. It's also a matter of fairness. You want to make sure that you're not taking more space and time than other applicants are taking. It's also a matter of concision. It's a matter of showing that you can express complex ideas within a particular set of constraints. I like to tell my students there are always constraints on your writing. You will almost never in your life have an unlimited field within which to write. Are always limits. There are always editors, publishers, people telling you how much you can and cannot write. So I would say take the word count seriously. That said, if it trips a little bit over, or of course comes in a little bit under, and the document is very clearly polished, it's tight, it is well structured, and it just feels like you need a few more words to round off a point that you're making, that's fine. It's not a hard cap on 750 where anybody who goes over will be disqualified. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but do take that 750 as seriously as possible. A question, can a master's degree in Old Testament studies work for a doctoral program in religious studies? I would say yes, but generally speaking, it's about the project that you're pitching rather than what you've done before. So if you have done a project on the Hebrew Bible at the master's level, and you want to turn that into a doctoral level project, it shouldn't matter what your master's, it shouldn't matter that your master's degree maybe came from a seminary or something like that. It's about the project that you pitch for the doctoral program. That's what we're fundamentally going to be evaluating on. So I would say, yes, a master's degree in Old Testament studies is a good precursor to a PhD in religious studies. Another question, what are some guidelines you might give in choosing recommenders for letters of recommendation, and what do you look for in a letter of recommendation? So there are a lot of different ways of thinking about this. I wouldn't say that there's one answer or one easy answer, but a few things that you want to consider are this. Number one, does the person know you? Does the person who, first of all, I will say, just in case it's a question, your letters of recommendation should all be academic letters of recommendation. You don't want professional letters. You don't want letters from former bosses or supervisors. You don't want community letters. They should be academic letters, usually from people who have taught you in an academic context. So within those parameters, I would say the best letters of recommendation come from people who know you well and who are excited about you and the work that you're doing. Now, you always have to balance this, right? Maybe you had a professor who you worked with 4 times, you took 4 classes from them, and they were pretty excited about you. But then you have another professor whom you only took 1 class from, but they were incredibly excited about your work. And maybe they were the ones who really told you, you need to go on and do doctoral research in religious studies. Get both of them. Ideally, those are the 2 that you would, those are 2 of the 3 that you would want for your letters of recommendation. If you have to choose one or the other, it's ultimately kind of a judgment call on your part. I wouldn't say that one of them is obviously the right way to go than the other one, but of course you want the strongest letters of recommendation possible. And so it may well be that somebody who is more excited about your work and can really speak to your suitability for a doctoral program in religious studies, maybe that's the person that you want to go with, because they can tell the most detailed story about why you are a good fit for a doctoral program in religious studies. And along those same lines, I would say that generally speaking, it is better to pursue letters of recommendation from professors who are closer to the field of religious studies than professors who are not. So maybe you got a really high grade in your chemistry class. Maybe that was the highest grade that you got during your entire time at university, was in, chemistry 324 or something. But that person is not going to be able to write you the best letter of recommendation because they can't really speak to your aptitude for religious studies as a field. And when the graduate admissions committee gets a letter like that, it can't get full value. It's not as illuminating as a letter that comes from somebody who is in proximity or in the field of religious studies, who can say, this student would be great for a religious studies doctoral program. So those are the 3 criteria that I would consider for getting letters of recommendation. You want their knowledgeability of you. You want their enthusiasm for you. You want to know that they are very confident that you are somebody who would flourish in a doctoral program, and you want them to know the field of religious studies as well as possible. Great questions. Other things or follow-ups on the questions that I've already answered? Okay, I think that's everything from us then. Please feel free to write to me if you have any further questions about kind of big picture things about the application process, about your materials, about the way to put together your application portfolio. Ms. Stoler is also available if you have questions about the technical aspects of the process. Thank you all for coming, and good luck all of you with your graduate school search.